on a podcast. Okay, thank you.
I love how you just told your child that you're on a podcast. Like that's something. You know, like your parents' generation wouldn't have ever gone, Jerry, just be quiet. Daddy's on a podcast now.
It was funny. I was thinking the other day about something my mum did. I don't know about you. When our school were offered recorders, you know, the little recorders.
Oh,
I had to have one. I had to have one. I want one. She said, no, son off. They're like £1 or whatever it was. Anyway, I hassled her, and I think I got the money out of my dad when he was drunk. So I got the £1. I've been playing it 4 or 5 minutes outside really badly. Window flies open on our estate. Oi! Ackerbilk! Turn it in! That was the end of my recorder playing career.
If your mum and dad could see you now, hang on, is your mum still around?
No, I'm an orphan. Whenever I watch Annie, I can really relate to it.
You're an orphan. Oh, that's.
Well, I was orphaned when I was 35, but it still counts, surely.
Oh no, completely, Jerry. You can try and curry favour with the audience by making you seem
straight away. Introduce me as everyone's favourite orphan after Annie and Oliver Twist.
So go on then. So if your parents could see you now, on a artsy fartsy podcast, like the middle class prince that you are.
God, middle class.
I'm sure they'd be quite kind of proud of you, no?
My dad, so yeah, he was a sort of hard-working Irish builder, so he wouldn't understand all this in face. I often think, I wonder what my dad would post on Facebook. It would be swear words, and it would be pretty cynical.
I tell you what, your dad probably would like, and I think we're living in the golden age of what we call meme culture. I think I've said it right. Meme. The golden age of meme culture has come to age this weekend, because I don't know if you've been watching the viral minutes of the Handforth Parish Council meeting that has gone absolutely viral.
I've not seen it, but I see it keep popping up. I keep meaning to watch it.
That is for angry old men who've got nothing better to do but than to shout at other people. But it's epic. You need to watch it, because I think, you know, when we think about politicians, we see our MPs, right? But we don't understand that underneath that layer of paid MPs, there's a whole load of self-appointed.
Yeah, parish being the worst. I mean, one of the things about being when you're a junior journalist is you have to go to parish council meetings or the equivalent wherever you are. They are the most boring things on earth. They really are. They really are. The people. It's funny you say that, right? Because I said this to somebody the other day. Actually, most parish, like most politicians I've ever interviewed, like MPs or even parish councillors, they fall into 2 distinct camps. They are either loving their own voice and so much in it for themselves that it's untrue, or they're genuinely good people that want to do something. They have a certain ideology linked to whichever party, but they're the 2 camps. It's either it's all about me or it's all about us. There was no middle. I never met anyone in the middle.
What I find really interesting is that, they say that power corrupts, but just a tiny little sprinkle of power at that sort of level to volunteer organizations, and you create people we'll create the phrase "little Hitlers." Yeah. You've got these little dictators that get drunk on their own power, which is it's an interesting phenomenon, and I think it's something that only we can kind of reconcile in this day and age with all this sort of nonsense. But it's lovely to see you so early on a Sunday morning. What would you normally be doing if you weren't talking to me?
You know what? I'd probably normally be doing a little bit of work or just sitting around. But you were lucky to see me. Last night I woke up at 3:00 and my stomach was in agony.
What did you eat?
Well, this is what I said to Wendy. We had chicken. She's as right as rain. So I don't know what it was.
She's made of tougher stuff than you, Jerry.
Well, she is. She's from Doncaster, which is a very tough place.
All right. Well, maybe let's start there. How does a man like you manage to get a woman like her?
The internet.
Because because she's clearly, what I've understood, is very patient, very understanding. She's also very talented. She's a very beautiful lady. She's a great mum, a great actress. What's she doing with you again? Remind us.
I don't know. It's just we met online on the internet, and I tell her she was really lucky. This was how lazy I was, right, when I was in my dating years, 10 years ago, something like that. I think 10 years ago. You can do a search parameter on it. Like 0. I was so lazy, I would not go beyond 5 miles. I would, like some people go, I would go to the end of the earth to find my true love. I wouldn't have gone to the end of the Jubilee line. I just wouldn't. So on her profile, she'd actually moved. So she was 10 miles away, but she hadn't changed her profile because it was always showing. I was living in Watford at the time, and it was showing 5 miles. But I always say to her, you just got lucky. It was just fate, really. That if you'd have changed it to 10, you'd have been too far away for me to even consider.
And how long have you two been an item then? How long ago was that?
10 years. I think we met, and then pretty much we met in November, and we were engaged in February, and Charlotte was conceived in June. So it was all very quick.
So that's basically because you realised that if you didn't marry this one, then that was it for you, really. You'd never convince another woman to, Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah.
Amazing. And here we are today. Young Charlotte. How old's Charlotte now?
8 years old, coming up to 9.
What does Charlotte want to be when she grows up?
She's very sporty. Before lockdown, she was doing boxing. She really likes boxing. Then she gets that from Wendy. Wendy's sort of more aggressive than me. And she likes football. She likes acting. So pretty much all the influences that she likes writing. So it's so interesting to see how you influence your child. Like they'll be your kids. You will see some things they do. And you think, oh Jesus, I do that. In good ways and bad ways. You get that as well.
Yeah. No, I get that. I caught one of them with a microphone the other day, presenting an imaginary show, which is basically what I do now. Yeah.
It's not. You do a good job of it as well. I think you're a natural presenter.
Well, let's go back to then. So right at the beginning, this is pre-Wendy, pre-everything else. You weren't always a journalist because you entered that quite late in life, didn't you?
Yeah, Jesus. So to go right back to the start really quickly. So I was born in northwest London on a council estate called Stonebridge in northwest London. It was a mixture of everyone. It's the great thing about there. I mean, it was predominantly Irish and predominantly Jamaicans, but there was smatterings of everyone. We had people from Laos, we had people from Vietnam, we had people from Poland. It was just everyone you could think of. Along our road, it was like United Nations. My mum used to say, this road is like the United Nations. Do you know what I mean? Left school at 16. My dad was a builder, so I said, I'm going to go work with my dad. Didn't do anything at school. Like, literally, was always quite bright, but a bit easily led. So I didn't even take exams in the end. And just did loads of jobs that were rubbish for about 14 years. And then when I was 30, I set up a removal firm in West London, in Acton. And that went really well for 3 years. And then I sold that. So I sold that. And it was quite nice money at the time. But one of the things that the people that bought it off me said, you can't go back into removals for 2 years. Like this, I imagine.
Yeah, they have a bar out. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So I was sitting there, I said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And my journalism career before that was writing the match report for our Sunday football team and getting it in the local paper. So it was funny looking back on it. It's funny because that experience taught me how to deal with the press, which helped later on. So sitting there one day, and I thought, you know what? I might give journalism a go. I've always liked writing. I've got time on my hands. I don't have to earn money for a couple of years. I picked up the phone, spoke to a guy I'm still in contact with now. I said, have you got any work experience there? And he said, yeah, come in. And it just started from there, really. But I missed out a key point there of the two things have influenced me to get to this point in professionally. one was the journalism, obviously, because I write for a living and create the content. But the other thing was I had a market stall when I was, so this is 1998, it was when the World Cup was on. So I had a market stall in Wembley Market, very famous market down our way. And that really influenced me business-wise, because I saw so much salesmanship, salespersonship, presentation, how to create a buzz around a product, just from these people on the stalls. And it was so.
It's almost that's almost a dying art, isn't it? Really, and I sometimes think that Corona is the thing that's going to finish that kind of thing off, because we don't do so much person-to-person selling anymore. It's all online.
Yeah, but then is it just we're just using a different platform to do the pitching? You know, so
could be, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But I used to love it because I used to be opposite as my store was football merchandise, some of it from questionable origins. And opposite me, there was a bloke who sold towels, but he was proper. He was absolutely proper. He had it's like a stage. It was like a stage, and he'd walk up and down like Anthony Robbins. And he'd go,
one of those mics.
100%. And he'd get it. And you'd see him. He would attract a crowd, and he'd only really start when he had enough people. And he had his little bots. He had his son and his nephew, and they'd be in the crowd, and they'd be buzzing up the crowd because they were acting like they were punters. And he'd be doing things, and he'd be bundling up stuff, you know, with his towels. Right, you've got these flannels, blah, blah, blah. You've got these towels. We're not here today and gone tomorrow. We're here today and gone today. A £5 for the lot. And they'd be piled up here, and it would be shit towels. Have you ever heard the phrase, any old flannel?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that apparently comes from, this is what I heard, and it's probably an urban myth. His grandfather, they were a long line of towel sellers, this family, yeah? His grandfather was supposed to have been the bloke who somebody turned around and said, I'm not buying that load of old flannel. Right? This was the myth on the market. He was a bit of a legend, this bloke. But to go back to the point, it was just brilliant. It was salespersonship and marketing at its best. You know, when you see all these gurus now, and they're all slick, and these guys on the market still would lose them and find them in terms of the pitch and presentation and spiel. No doubt about it.
Do you think we've got too many gurus? And do you think the reason we even within our industry, we have quite a few gurus, and the reason that we need them sometimes is that we're always looking for a quick fix, aren't we? We're looking for somebody else to sort of go, this is going to make it work for you.
Yeah, 100%. Look at the phenomena in America with Trump. Trump had so many people because he said, I'm going to sort out all politicians do it, but Trump springs to mind. I'm going to sort out all your problems. And he does it in a really simplistic matter to say, it's going to be easy. We're going to build a wall. We're going to do this. We're going to be nothing, you know, he never achieved anything that great, it would seem. But in the industry, there's a lot of, but I think it's across society now, across social media. You've got instant experts. Somebody can turn up and say, I'm an expert. Why are you an expert? They don't get questioned that much. That's why journalism is important. You know, I got in my journalist training, always got told why. Ask how. You know, somebody says, a politician in particular, I'm going to do this. How are you going to do that? Well, how would that work? Do you know what I mean? You keep pressing them.
So not a lot of people know this, but I had a bit of hiatus from being an estate agent. This is going back to probably about 2001, and I'd always wanted to be a journalist and loved writing and all that sort of stuff. And I hounded my entry into journalism wasn't quite as smooth as yours. Going, do you need any work experience? I went, yeah. I wrote to the editor of a newspaper every single Friday morning. It was just part of my ritual. I would ask him if he's got any work. One day I got a phone call from this guy, and he went, are you going to fucking leave me alone if I give you a job? And I was like, yeah. So, and I began proofreading the newspapers because they have people that sort of check stuff before it goes out. And I would do that every evening. And then eventually I waited until it was sort of summer holidays time and different reporters went missing and on holiday and whatever, and this guy turned around to me and go, "Oi, Mintz, do you want a job? Go and interview this woman." And literally just one of those little tape recorders and a pad, and I went out to interview this woman. I'm sat there, write up this whole article, and I hand it in. The guy looks at it and he goes, "What is this?" It says she's setting up a charity, and where was this meeting? And I sort of told him which area it was. It was the equivalent of sort of Mayfair. Right. He said, "Well, does that not go into the article? The fact that you met this immensely wealthy woman who's using her wealth to..." I said, "Well, no, she's setting up a charity. She's doing something good." He goes, and that was journalism back in those days. It always had some sort of... you were there to hold somebody to account, not necessarily to what was morally right, but certainly to what the agenda of that particular newspaper was.
100%. 100%.
So given that, we have an industry press in the property industry, which is, I'd like to tell you it's got an agenda, but I don't think it does. Largely, when I read it these days, and we're talking about the sort of post-Ros Renshaw sort of era. You've got a press that is largely an advertising book for various different companies that are launching something new, and that's what they think is newsworthy.
Yeah, I do tend to agree. I think the trade press at the moment, the three main guys, because they're all three fellas at the moment, they're good journalists. I don't know whether they're under pressure to get so much content out that they can't do an in-depth piece. They can't question what's in front of them. But I've had it in the past where I've sent stuff, and this was where Ros was really good. I'd send her news releases when I was doing more PR, and she would question. She'd come back with questions. Well, what's this? How's that going to work? And just like journalism. But I think the trade.
Ros really did go to. She went to town on a piece. I first came into contact with Ros when we were at the height of what was known as portal juggling back in those days, where properties would phantomly appear at night and then disappear by the next morning, and all that sort of bullshit that was going on. And with the help of someone like Robert May, he said, "Oh, get in touch with Ros Renshaw, and she's a proper journalist. She'll look at it." And she did. She really sort of interrogates the facts and gets to the bottom of it. She would absolutely never printed anything just on kind of say so. She'd need to do that research, and I feel like we're missing that. But do you think that's because the press these days is? I mean, what we're doing now, to a certain extent, is a little bit of journalism, because we are documenting thoughts and feelings about something. But do you think that because there's so much free press, that the actual nitty-gritty investigative reporting has gone by the wayside? Because that, let's face it, it costs time and money. Yeah,
100%. I mean, everyone can be Rupert Murdoch now, because you can set up your own channel, whether that's like what we're doing here, or your own blog, or your own vlog, and you set yourself up. And I see people sort of across all industries describing themselves as journalists. But I did a post about this early last week. I remember there was this. What happened was a graduate came in from Oxford to come and do work experience. Oxford University, really pompous fuckery. Excuse my language, but really pompous. Yeah, come in and blah blah blah, saying something. And then he said, "Well, yeah, because I'm a journalist." And he was like 22, and he went, "I'm a journalist." And the news editor at the time went, "Have you ever done a death knock?" And this kid goes, "What's that?" And he explains, a death knock is basically when you go and knock on someone's door. Let's say, I can think of one always springs to my head. There was a girl that was missing in Harrow. She was missing for about a week. And whenever I think about it, it sends a chill down my spine. And I got told to, when her body got found, to go and knock on her family's door and ask if they want to speak to the local paper. And you knock on the door and there's this family that's distraught. And I was really polite. I was quite good at death knocks, actually. But
I'd imagine I'd want to see your face on my doorstep at my most tragic moment in life.
I've I got taught the technique to how to do it. This is what I mean about to say you are something. You've had to learn how to be that something.
Yeah.
Anyway, and this was the point the guy was making about to this graduate. So anyway, I knock on the door and just they didn't want to speak, but they were polite, and I just give them my card and said, and genuinely heartfelt, our condolences. We're really sorry. We'll do a tribute piece. That was always the line that he said, and it would have been with a murder victim. It would have been a tribute piece. So anyway, the editors basically said this to this young kid just to cut him down a couple of pegs or two. Have you done a death knock? And I always think when I see people bandying around about journalism and that, have they done a death knock? Well, nah, you're not a journalist until you've done a death knock, or got your qualifications in shorthand, media law, had a door slammed in your face, been told by numerous people they're going to kill you. A property developer once said to me, which I thought was very ironic. I did a story about how bad this development was, and he said, "If that makes the paper, I'll come down on you like a ton of bricks." And I couldn't resist. I said, "Well, judging by what you've built, that's possible." And he went apoplectic. So yeah. No, I think to go back to your question, there's some good citizen journalism can be really good, but it can be really bad.
And it's more of the same, isn't it? A lot of it. It's not really adding value. It's just somebody else doing. And I think in this sort of YouTube age, there's a million people that have all set up different accounts. And I'm amazed at what, for instance, kids of your Charlotte's generation and my kids' generation look at in terms of what's entertaining. So my son said, "Oh, can I have a YouTube channel?" I'm like, "What are you going to post on your YouTube channel?" "Oh, just it'll be me playing Roblox and different games." And I'm like, so people have channels where they just literally play computer games? And he said, "Yeah." And people like you watch them back. And so what we do nowadays is what the youth are doing, in some cases, are watching other people do things that we would have said are sort of recreational. I don't know if you even had computer games at your age. When you were...
Yeah, we had Spectrums and Commodores, I'll have you know.
There you go. Did you have the ZX Spectrum with the tape recorders? I had one of them.
I think so. We had Binatone. Did you have Binatone, which was like a console, and it was like doop, doop, doop. The tennis was like doop.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. It was really simplistic, but that was like seen as a treat if you could play on that.
Yeah.
Whereas kids these days are just watching other idiots playing the same game, and I can't understand it. So I think, we live in this day and age where what counts as entertainment is very much it's anybody's guess, really, isn't it?
It is. It's funny because I was thinking about this the other day because I listened to Joe Rogan's podcast and I found a new guy called Lex Fridman. I think I pronounced it right. And then obviously everyone knows Joe Rogan, but this Lex guy, and I thought I'd almost rather listen to a podcast now than watch the telly.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to sort of long form entertainment, I think podcast is probably going to be the big growth area because
I just don't think, if you look about what's on telly, we've got all this choice, haven't we? Tons and tons of on-demand content, but it's difficult to find something. How many times do you sit there and go, "Oh, not watching that, I've watched this, I don't," and Miriam and I will sit there for maybe an hour just literally flicking through. We'll go through Netflix, Amazon, Sky, whatever's on there, and you still can't find anything. But the good old-fashioned stuff, like, do you remember like something like Terry Wogan or Parkinson or whatever, where they sit down, they're interviewing other people? That doesn't really exist so much anymore. You've got people like Graham Norton, who I think do, to me, as close to a wonderful job as possible. I think he's amazing at what he does, but it's hard to find things that will truly entertain you for an hour. Yeah,
no, it's true. And I think it's that what is it? If you give people 100 choices, they pick nothing. They won't make a choice. That's a marketing. I think it might have even been Malcolm Gladwell. I could be quoting the wrong person, but he said too much choice is bad for the consumer, or bad for the business because you're giving them
we need to narrow it down. So when I first became aware of the existence of Jerry Lyons, It was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Shaun Adams, who a lot of people will know, he had a bunch of, I think, touting letters that he'd got from a sort of a PR expert called Jerry Lyons, and he said, "Oh, these are great. You need to get on them." And I think I reached out to you, and you emailed me a file full of these letters. And what was odd about it was you said, "These are the letters. If you think you can use them, great. The price is £50 or whatever it was." Sorry?
I think it was more than that.
Here's me trying to make you seem reasonably priced, Jerry. Okay,
There's
a little bit of marketing that goes on behind the scenes here. Anyway, the price is whatever the price was, and but if you think you don't want to pay that, then bin them. I'm trusting you. Do not use them. And what I thought was peculiar was I've not seen anybody give away their creative content on trust and sort of really trust people to do the right thing with them. And obviously since then I've got to know you. That's very much your style. So the other day you put out three different guides for what you call, is it focused particular
specific sellers?
Specific, there you go, specific sellers. So I think there was one for probate, there was one for divorce, there was one for downsizing, which is fantastic, by the way, because those are 3 areas of sales in the estate agency that crop up quite a lot. And then the obvious ones are stuff like first-time buyers. I think there's plenty of first-time buyer guides out there, but nobody's done a guide for divorcing. I mean, it's and so that's great. Probate is something that happens to all of us at some point, and you need to be sometimes have your hand held through that process. So I think that's great. But when I said to you, "Look, Jerry, I need to get a look at these things," you just sent them over straight away, and I think you're the only person doing that in the industry.
There's a real easy explanation to that. Is my dad always said, "You've got to be a person of your word. You know, if you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. You have to be honest." And I just treat people. I'll send it, and I still do it with certain products. I don't do it. I've got a bit more cynical since them days, but I think to myself, if your reputation is worth, I think those letters were £250 for the whole pack. Yeah. So if your reputation is worth £250, good luck to you. Because you ain't going to last long, or if you do, you're going to be known as the schmuck of the town. And I think I've had a couple of people I know that nicked them, right. But you always find them in the end. And you send them a letter, and then they end up paying more, or they've got that horrible nagging feeling that might flag them up on social media. Do you know what I mean? So
you found one this week though, didn't you? That had nicked some of this stuff.
Interesting one. Yeah, do you want me to sort of? I won't say that. Even though I should, because he's a yeah. So anyway, we did a stamp duty news piece for all our members. So it's syndicated licensed content. Yeah? Think PA, think Press Association. When they send out a piece of news, whoever uses that piece of news pays for the right to use it. Yeah. Yeah. So this guy has basically been flagged up by another member in his town and said, "Oh, Jerry, this guy's nicked your content, but he's in my town, so that's how I know." So I think, "Oh, right, got an issue." So we contacted this guy, and he basically, in a nutshell, he said, "I saw it online, so I took it. It didn't have anyone's name on it. There wasn't a copyright at the bottom." Now, most of our pieces have a bit of copyright at the bottom. I must have forgot, in all honesty. I must have forgot. Or he's taken it out. Anyway, we said, "Look, you've been caught bang to rights. Make a donation to charity of the member's choice." He said no. So I weren't looking to profit. I never looked to profit from these things.
And did he remove the offending article from online?
He removed it, but then he blamed a junior member of staff. And I said to him, "Look, mate, if you've got, right, so if your member of staff is thick enough to nick something off the internet and pass it off as your own, but smart enough to realise, oh, that copyright little clause might help us." It doesn't, by the way. If I was to really push it, I'm the copyright owner. I could have pushed that a lot harder. I said, if you're telling me that, you're a liar. You know, how can they be that stupid and that clever at the same time? It just makes no sense. So anyway, me and the member decided, and they liaised as well, him and the member. And the member said to me, look, there's bigger things to worry about. We know he's marked his cards. That was a phrase I used to hear a lot as kids. If somebody had done something bad, they'd mark their cards there. And he'd be like, oh, God, they're a wrong un.
So talking about wrong-uns, we work in an industry which has got in terms of the public, it's still a bad rap, despite the fact that we go out of our way these days to make a massive effort to seem like the good guys, the nice guys. So you will see over the next few weeks, if you've not already seen it, agents offering free printing for schools. They're offering laptops, so there'll be press opportunities where agents will be handing over. Now, actually, Stephen Brown, who you've done quite a bit of work with, has been spearheading this campaign, and he's raised a phenomenal amount of money. I mean, I think we're 2 weeks in, and he was over 40,000 last time I looked. He's probably even higher than that. And it's worth talking about because it's really given certain agents, it's shown, I think, that the agility of independent agents for a start, to get out there, roll something out before the big boys do. And it was lovely to see that all those weeks later, after agents have been offering free printing to schools, that, you know, your likes of sort of Winkworths,
wasn't it? They were
your big franchises have kind of woken up and thought, oh, it's time to do the right thing. So it's lovely to see that. But sometimes it feels like hard work, Jerry. And there's a part of me that's going, can we stop pretending to be nice now? I
think one thing I love about you is your cynicism. I do love that. I think it's refreshing because it is because you question stuff. That's why you'd be a good journalist, because you go, meh.
Thanks, Joe.
One of the reasons why I was better at PR than journalism was I'm naturally enthusiastic. And I'll go, yeah, that's the best idea. I'll hear an idea and think it's the best idea ever. I don't analyse stuff. I go, yeah, that's brilliant. But in PR, that's great because you're playing that out to an agenda. In journalism, it's not, because you've got to be more questionable. But I know what you mean. I can tell, like, you can almost know which agent's going to respond really quickly to a community need, because they're just like that. It's in them. It's intrinsic. It's them. And this was the thing why the corporates were so late to the party when it came to the printing appeal and the computer appeal, is because they probably discussed it from a business level. Well, what's this going to do for us? And how are we going to do this? And what PR are we going to get out of this? Where the likes of yourselves, Oliver James, Luke Sinclair, they just did it because they do this sort of stuff. It's in their agency's DNA, and that's repeated up and down the country. You know, with the agents that always jump onto a community project and help, you know, it's just in them.
So not all agents are created equal. So you've got some that are genuinely good. I mean, and then through these sort of things, I've got to speak to some of the nicest people you would ever care to meet. And it's a very tremendously warm and kind of sharing, caring, touchy-feely environment where I've only had one person that has ignored me when I've asked them, will you give me an hour of your time to talk about what you do and your relationship with Proptech and property. There's only been one person that has ignored me. I'm not going to name her because I'm going to give her a second chance. But mostly everybody else instantly got back to me and went, yeah, whenever, yeah, we'll do it. Not because I'm anything to talk to, but because that is the environment in which they operate in. That's the space that they work in. I did one interview with Oliver James, who you know.
Yeah.
You may know him as under the his artist name Oliver Press, but Oliver James, as he goes these days, I interviewed him for an hour. We could not use any of that. I got 2 30-second segments. The rest of it was me and an old mate just catching up, and it was awful. But on the whole, people have been very generous with their time, and that's how I find the majority of the people that I talk to. But yeah, it's not really translated across to the public so much. Do you think that we're beginning to shift that perception?
Yeah, I do. I see it. I see it with the members of my little content club. I think one thing I'd say in common, one thing I think, and this more anecdotally, the ones that seem to love the club that I've created, love the community aspects of it. You know, the stuff we do around the Karma Club, which is where we donate money to community projects, and they're just good people. Now, there's loads of good people in the industry, but because it's humans, there's a few not so good people. Do you know what I mean? So it's just a reflection of life. There's no more bad agents than there are in other. There's bad nurses. Let's get that right. Look, you know, people saying about doctors. Oh, great doctors. Well, Harold Shipman, not the best. Do you know what I mean? So, you know,
that's like maybe an extreme example, but yeah, I get that.
Yeah, extreme examples get attention. That's the bit the old journalist left in me. Go with the biggest.
Do you think that somebody like Harold Shipman wanted that? So, like, if you look at him in sort of the press coverage of that guy and that haunted sort of look that he had, but do you honestly think that? Because you sometimes think, what motivates a serial killer? Why did they do that for so long? Is it the power? Is it something deeper than that? Did they want to live on in infamy? Did they want people to be? I mean, the fact that now Harold Shipman's maybe 20 years ago, is it?
Yeah.
And the fact that if you want an example of a bad doctor, Harold Shipman's the first one that springs to mind. Or a bad landlord, Fred West. Yeah. Was it Fred West? Or is it Fred West, or is it the guy that
equating Fred West to be the landlord? That's a great show.
Fred West, or is that the guy that does the tuna? That's John West.
That's John West. John West, totally different. Just in case the representatives are watching, we'd like to make that clear that John West.
And if John West Tuna would like to sort of endorse or support our causes, send it in. We'll Jerry likes tuna, don't you?
Yeah. Not really, because I'm a bit ethical now with my food. I've gone down that ethical road.
So hang on, so tuna's not ethical because
I think the way they catch it, isn't it, in the big mass nets where they basically go wallop and just take up everything. And there's some tuna, we'll have a bit of that. But they've taken everything out.
Is that because of the dolphins? People like dolphins.
Yeah, dolphins.
They're like smiling sharks, aren't they, really?
They are, and you know, they make that funny noise. They're cute. I love dolphins.
Well, make a dolphin noise. That's not a dolphin noise.
No?
Then they do like a sort of a... Isn't that a dolphin noise?
That's a really good dolphin impersonation, by the way.
Thank you.
No, I'm not very good at like dolphin impersonation. It's not my forte. But to go back to your
back to the question.
In all seriousness, with the Harold Shipman example, because it's so extreme, like it's almost like a state agency suffers from something that happened or was happening 20, 30 years ago. You know, when it was a bit of the Wild West in the 1990s, it felt like literally anyone was opening up and saying they're an estate agent and overpricing. It might have even been the mid-80s, it seems, that reputation came from. And it's that stigma has been attached to a estate agency forever. Because I just, like, people say to me, what do I do? And I say, I do content and I work with estate agents. That's normally what I say. I do marketing for estate agents, because if you say content, they just ask you too many questions.
Yeah.
And so I work with estate agents. And I said, you better check your fingers after shaking their hands. They're really dodgy. I said, no, you know what? In my experience, 98% of them are great people. It was a bit like, you know, they used to, and this goes back to my market days. You know, they used to say market traders are dodgy.
Yeah. Barrow boys.
Yeah, Barrow boys. Oh, they're dodgy. Yeah. The only time I ever see any sort of underhand crookedness was people stealing from market stalls, public, and the public passing off fake £20 notes or £10 notes. That's really common on the markets I was working, where the public tried to catch the trader out. So yeah.
So hang on, we've come back. We examined why Harold Shipman did what he did. We talked about So I tell you what's slightly different. You talk about everybody being able to open an estate agency.
Yeah.
The barrier, the bar to entry in our profession, as much as we're going to go on about professional standards and there's that whole Roper thing that's going to come in, but let's face it,
Sorry.
It's one of those industries where you don't need an awful lot of pre-qualification to come into it. As long as you can shove a for sale board up and convince a Rightmove rep that you're worth taking money off, which, you know, all Rightmove reps will take your money, then that's it. You're in the game. And I think I think that's why you will see a proliferation of people that perhaps are opportunists, that they're in it for the wrong reason. What strikes me, I've done a few career evenings at schools where we'll turn up with a for sale board, and I'll turn up with Josh, and we've got literature about why estate agency might be a decent. Oh, by the way, could you write something for people doing careers evenings at schools? This is just an aside. I know that you write all sorts of content, but there's very little out there that really convinces people of what estate agents do for kids who are choosing career paths.
You know what I mean? With something like that, I'd flip it back round and I'd interview somebody like you and say, why are you an estate agent? You speak to a good estate agent. So I read on a thread, somebody said about I forget who it was a Facebook thread recently, the responsibility and privilege a good estate agent sees their job as. You're responsible for getting a family from this house to their dream house, for example, or helping a couple divorce more amicably than they thought possible. It's a huge responsibility, you know. If you look at it that way, if you look at it from purely a money point of view, it's just a transaction.
Well, what I was going to say is it's interesting talking to parents of children as they're sort of dragging them around these careers evenings. And it's just interesting to see what parents now, I suppose the school that I did it at was it was a middle class sort of Jewish school. So you've got a lot of, you know, you must be a doctor or an accountant or a solicitor. So those were the people that got visited first. There was a policeman on the police stand who all the mothers were queuing up to talk. Come on, let's go and talk to the policeman. Gorgeous, yeah. But when it came to estate agency, they would sort of put their arm round their kid and kind of usher them away, like, oh, don't talk to them. It's fine. I mean, if all else fails and the prostitutes stand down the road, don't take you, then the estate agents will do for you. Or it was parents of kids that came up to me and said, oh, our Tommy's not so great at school. He's not going to do so well. What's a estate agency like? And I always look at them and went, yeah, thank you very much. But it's true. You can get into this and you don't need to be academic. You don't need to be pretty. You just need to be willing to help.
What would you say is the best two skills an estate agent needs to have?
God.
To be successful.
So, if you would have asked me this wearing my cynical hat 5-10 years ago, I would have said you need to be a damn good liar, because sometimes you need to walk into somebody's house and go, oh, this is beautiful. Tell me more about your anaglypta wallpaper, madam. But that actually, I tell you who's changed my mind on that. Josh Gertler, a guy that I work with, you know, Josh, young guy, and I'm probably seeing the world again through his eyes. He's sort of come up from virtually nothing in a state agency and sort of worked his way up from having a Saturday job and doing stuff like archiving and filing, pretty much the way I got into it, then slowly doing viewings, evaluations and so on. And the thing about Josh is he's a really, really bad liar, like tremendously bad liar. But one thing is for certain is that when they say sincerity is the hardest thing to fake. Now, I think if you can be sincere, and Josh has that in when members of the public deal with him, they feel a sense of security because he's taking time to really sort of understand their situation. So I would say you need to be able to be truly sincere as an agent. That's number one. Number two. Do you want my modern explanation, or do you want like what I would have said a long time ago? I think modern thing, I think you need to be willing, you need to be agile. You need to be able to do more than one thing. I find myself I do a video, I'll have to put together, I'll get on Canva and do a little design for an advert. you're a negotiator, you're an accountant, you're somebody's psychologist. So you need to be willing to wear those different hats. And if you can't juggle at least 2 or 3 different areas, then this isn't a job for somebody that's blinkered and that can just do one thing. So I don't know if that's the answer that you wanted, but I'll give it.
No, it's just interesting because I think I've never met a good estate agent who's skin. You know, when people say about, what sort of career it is? I say I know a lot of estate agents that love it. I've got this thing actually. Like when people say they're passionate, I think there's a test you can, if you're truly passionate about anything. I mean, truly, properly passionate. There's a test you can do on yourself.
Go on.
Would you do it for free? Yeah. I would. If you would, that would do. But do you see what I mean? It's like I see Charlotte's sports coaches all doing it for free, or kids drama coaches, or counsellors doing it for free. I think they're truly passionate. I think, would I do it for free? I'd write for free, yeah, and I have So I would write for free, but
it's interesting you say that, because through, I think, definitely since the beginning of lockdown, I have done tons and tons and tons and tons of free content, podcasts, and not just because people won't pay to listen to me. I know that, but I've done community stuff. I do, and the other day somebody said to me, "You get a real kick out of doing this sort of stuff, don't you?" And I do it all day and all night for free. I got up early on a Sunday morning to see you for free, so that's amazing. Why estate agents, Jerry? Like, you could have picked on any vulnerable person. Why an estate agent?
So when I was still doing journalism, it's just purely by chance, really. One of my mates had an agency in northwest London where we grew up, and he rang me. He went, "Oh, you do writing, didn't you?" He was an intelligent lad. "You do writing, didn't you?" And I went, "Yeah." He said, "Do us a favour, knock me up some blogs, and I'll give you cash. I'll give you cash." I remember him saying, "I'll give you cash." So he said cash. I'm like, still the market trader with me. Oh yeah.
Okay, we're on.
It just started like that. So I did a few blogs for him. Quite enjoyed it, and then I did PR for agents, and then went into the PR's dying in terms of all the outlets are shrinking, and everyone can be their own Rupert Murdoch, like I said. So what the agents need more than PR, they need good content. So that's where I stepped into it. And again, going back to my market trading days, the reason why I work with only exclusive agents and turn people away is because something I heard on the market stall when somebody said about this guy opposite us who was attracting these big crowds. And I said, "Why does he always wait? Well, he's got a crowd. Why don't he just start selling then?" And he said, "Nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd." So it's such good, wise advice, because if you see a crowd, you sort of gravitate to it. Most people do. Maybe not nowadays with coughing. You go, "Oh, there's a crowd, I'm going over there." Do you know what I mean? But nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. So to get back to what you said, I just got into a estate agency writing by an accident. And I basically got bribed with cash. Basically, somebody waved a £50 note under my nose, and I went like a little hamster.
You know what? That's a great entry into an introduction into our industry. But what's interesting is that you've got people doing your job, content. So there are more than one of you out there. We've seen the very well advertised fight between you and Chris Watkin. I've obviously just spoken to Chris recently. There are other people doing iterations of what you two do. I think you two probably represent the finest I've seen in the industry. There are others out there, and I know there's some great ones. But if you would have asked me whether this service, content writing or PR or anything that you do, Jerry, in terms of the strand of journalism and services that you represent to the industry, if you would have said to me, "Is that essential for an estate agent 10 years ago?" I would have said, "Nah, it's money for old rope. I could do it myself if I had time. I just haven't got time." And by the way, who's going to be listening and reading that stuff? Because the blog 10 years ago, it was just vanity, wasn't it? It was just a way of me saying, "Oh, look at me, I'm writing something that someone's going to want to read." Whereas these days, it is so ingrained in us that marketing and being on message and in terms of the ethos of your company, if you want to get a public tone of voice out there, if you want to address your public in a certain way, you're going to need a content writer. So therefore, this is me building up to Proptech. You actually, although you're not tech and you're a service, in my wider definition of Proptech, J is very much for journalism, and it definitely has its place. Content, talk to me.
Content, it's interesting because Simon Whale, the esteemed Simon Whale, he once described what I do as very refreshingly low tech, which I get because I totally understand. Because what I see content that likes of me and Chris and others are, we're the coal shovelers that throw the coal into the steam engine's engine, and the Proptech is the steam engine. So we're just giving you the stuff to get out there. So whatever platform or whichever way you get it out there, you're going to need the coal. So we're the coal. We're just coal miners, not just coal miners. Because I just watched Billy Elliot, and I've got a lot of respect for coal miners. Just want to get it out there.
And for dancers as well.
Yeah, it's a good film. Forget how good.
Are you a dancer, Jerry? Because I noticed. Sorry, it would be remiss of me not to mention. Yeah. Your hair is looking amazing. Can I just say, very thick, very
luscious.
And when I look at you, I think, wow, if I could see that dancing on stage, I'd pay money for that.
Well, funny enough, my stage career lasted it's probably about 2 minutes, because back in this is a true story. Back in my primary school, I was Buttons, like for Cinderella.
Yeah.
Before. And Melissa Bates was Cinderella. And seriously, even now, I think I've not seen her in 40 years. I bet she was still the most beautiful person you've ever seen. She was unbelievable Cinderella. So I'm Buttons there. So anyway, we're at the show. I remember it. We've got hundreds of mums and dads there, all from the estate, all converged on our little primary school. And I'm standing in the wings, and it was an elevated stage, like a step. And I got speaking to Spencer Whiff, so I've missed my cue because I'm probably giving him some banter or something like that. Anyway, buttons, like that, and I got pushed by the teacher. So I ran on the stage, and my mum had bought me shiny shoes because she said, if you're going to go up the stage, you've got to look nice. Bear in mind, I was wearing knickerbockers and long white socks that they put me in as this. I wasn't looking nice. I was looking like a trainee transvestite or something. So I jump on the stage, but because my shoes are so shiny, I slid off. I literally slid off the stage. That was the stage career finished in gone in 30 seconds. So sorry to digress.
That was the moonwalk. So we're going back to coal mining. You put the coal in the engine. So you guys are providing us with the content. But I think in terms of tone of voice is also very important. Now I want to talk. I spoke to Chris about it. We got his take on it. There was an incident a couple of weeks ago where an agent put out a flyer with a bit of content on there that was deemed to be extremely offensive to some people with regards to their view of Corona or COVID and the opportunities that have been delivered as a result of that. So I think it was a very upbeat sort of flyer. It was, COVID's been amazing for people selling houses because this is what we've achieved. And then the public lashed out, didn't they? And that's very interesting because content's very powerful. If you misjudge the tone of an article and you sort of underestimate what the public are likely to, how they're going to process it, you can very quickly go wrong with it, can't you?
Yeah, you can. I've not actually read that piece. I watched that interview, and I said to myself, find that piece and look at it. You've just got to be. It's like we were always taught: if there's a crisis or an accident or a disaster, don't even think about trying to do a pun or some spin on it. From writing point of view, just tell the facts. So they might have been trying to tell the facts, but it's a bit naive to think that you're not going to get pulled up if you say COVID is an opportunity. You might be able to say that if your audience are hedge fund managers, but if you've got a general public reading your stuff, then you're going to get people criticise you and tear you down for that. And having not read it, I can't comment too much about that, but it sounds like the headline is almost leaving your chin wide open to get hit by people coming back. So that's all estate agents. I told you, estate agents, all they care about is selling houses. They don't care about.
I think what was really interesting in that particular case was also the format. So I googled. I was dying to know who the writer of that content was, and I thought I knew it wasn't you because I with respect, I get all your content, so I don't. But I thought, okay, it could be this one, it could be that one. It was very heavily stats based. So I Googled just one portion of the sentence just to see whether it was out there online, and that would tell me whether it was a content writer or not, if several agents were using it. And it came up that a lot of agents were using it, and it had gone back to sort of November, December time. Agents up and down the country had been using that particular wording, that particular article in blog posts. So they put them on their website, and that was it. And it was tucked away, and it was done. Mm-hmm. But this agent had put it on a flyer, a door-to-door leaflet, and it had gone into people's houses. And I think it had somehow further cheapened the message of that article, because I think if you were to read the article, what you would understand is that, yes, although COVID obviously is a tragedy, and I don't think it went out of its way to highlight that enough, it has also said that for some people, it has been, certainly financially, has been better than others. And by the way, if you were thinking of selling your house, now might not be the worst timing in the world, because there was a bit of a feeding frenzy. And all of these other agents that have used it, nothing. And I think the only guy that seemed to get slapped for it was the guy that actually put it into people's houses. So I don't know if that says more about whether the public take time to read blogs, or whether you pick up a flyer and it's sort of, do you know what I mean? It's cheap. Yeah. It's in your hand. It's kind of in your face. You've invaded somebody's home with it.
Yeah, it's more direct. I mean, to see an agent's blog, you'd have to visit their website. To see an agent posted on social media, you'd have to follow them to see that article. Everyone's got a letterbox. So really, whoever did that piece of content missed the trick, because if you'd have written it really well and really sympathetically, and just really, and this is sometimes where agents miss a trick, they just can't help themselves to try and sell their services with a bit of content, whether it be a blog or a direct piece of mail.
Yeah,
you'd been better off telling the facts. And I've not seen it, so I don't want to slag anyone off. But there's a way. I think there's a way to write something like that a lot more sympathetically, and then just there's almost a throwaway line, just a passing, and it's like literally 10 words now is a reasonable time to sell property, something like that. Listen, people have died, man. You've got to be so careful, man. You're going through the door and you might have had a bad day, and then next thing you know, you've got this bloody estate agent hitting you up with something that just seems a bit off kilter.
Unwanted solicitations. Jerry, Proptech, in the wider sense, is there anybody that has really impressed you in terms of what they're doing in that space? And not to give you the answer to that question.
Give me the answer. I don't know it.
Well, I'm going to give you the answer to that question, because a lot of people go, I've not thought about that. I can give you the answer to that because I caught you in conversation with one of the more impressive people in Proptech, Sam Hunter from Homesearch. When I turned up early that day for the Negotiator Awards, seems like an age ago, doesn't it? Was it 2000? It must have been 2019. Must have been.
BC or Corona.
Yeah, when we could all kiss and touch each other. And I feel bad, actually, that I didn't kiss you when I saw you, because now I'll never know how that feels. But I met you and Sam Hunter, and I recognised you, I think, and I sort of recognised Sam was wearing a dodgy, he had sort of a remnants of Movember on his top lip. He looked like he he should not come within 20 meters of a kid's school. But what was interesting, obviously, you two were talking, and I think Sam had a very refreshing view on how to do things. And if anybody listens to Sam talk, he's certainly very impressive, isn't he? And I don't know whether it's the Australian laid-back drawl that he has, but he has a different outlook.
Yeah, Sam's a very impressive individual. He just speaks so well. He's a good bloke. Do you know what I mean? And you talk about a sort of technology that pivoted during COVID. Remember that first bit of lockdown? Homesearch just really went and become a portal pretty much within.
It did. I
spoke to Sam and he said, I've got this mad idea. And he explained it. And I'm not very techie, so it's a bit lost on me. But I said, what, like a portal type thing? And yeah. And off and away he went. It's incredible how quickly they did that.
It's crazy. I think it was forced on them. I think, you know, when we talk about PR, and this is probably, we're getting towards the end of this. I'm going to release you in a minute, I promise.
That's right. Stay all day.
When we, I know that. But when we talk about PR disasters, I think Rightmove, right, with respect to that big, massive PLC, got as close to a PR disaster as we've seen any company get in our industry at the beginning of lockdown. So if you remember, there was that incident where they had offered agents a discount effectively, and it wasn't even a discount. What they said was, "Well, we're gonna allow you to pay it off over a certain period of time, if, by the way, you can prove you've got the goods, you've got the readies to pay for it." And a lot of us found that message insulting, insensitive. It wasn't seen as help, and there was sort of a 10-day period, I think, where they were getting their shit together and deciding what it was they were actually going to come back with, while Zoopla was frantically, you know, running around to offer the industry something, and whilst Onthemarket were burying themselves deep under the carpet so that nobody would actually bother them on it. Homesearch came in like a knight in shining armor, and they wanted to swoop that up. And I think going back to Rightmove on this, more recently, I got a message from Chris Watkin on Friday afternoon. He said, "Can you please jump on the thread for the free laptops thing, because Rightmove have been the only ones that haven't yet put their hand in their pocket, and all they've said is, we donated a few laptops to a school in Milton Keynes."
Yeah.
Now we're talking about it's a behemoth, this thing. It's a massive thing. And I said, well, look, these guys should be held to a higher standard than everybody else, because they have got, it's like when people start having a swipe at footballers and stuff and actors and whatever. It's because they earn so much, they put themselves out there, they're fair game. To me, Rightmove is the closest we get to that, and yet they cannot seem to get a PR message right.
You know what that is? I've thought about this a lot, and I actually commented on that thread. So Rightmove, you know, like after they said, "Well, we've donated," it was such a wanky, mealy-mouthed response. We've donated some laptops to schools in Milton Keynes. Are they based in Milton Keynes? Is that their head office?
I don't know. I don't know how it managed to do that. I'm assuming that they've got somebody that works at Rightmove, has kids that go to school in Milton Keynes. That's the way I pieced it together. But
so I thought about that, and I did comment to say it's unlike Rightmove to miss a PR open goal, right? And then I thought about this. They just don't care. That's what it comes down to. There's PR mistakes and there's PR culture. They don't care. Let's get that right. And I'd love a Rightmove person to come back and argue the case with me, and I'm happily debating with them. Here was your opportunity in the first lockdown to help agents. You kicked a deck can down the road with strings attached to that can. Yeah.
And by the way, just in case any Rightmove rep or anybody from Rightmove decides to then come back at you and say, "Oh, but we gave agents a massive discount." Do you know that this week Rightmove have emailed pretty much every member agent, said your fees are going up, and in the justification letter that they sent with it, they said, well, it was because of the support that we had to give you agents in the first lockdown.
On, man.
So there we go. We went from kicking the debt can down the road to, oh, no, don't worry about that. We're just writing it off. That's what we're doing. Look at us. That's amazing. To, we're putting your fees up because you need to pay us back for what we did for you, buddy. To me, it's just, wow. They never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity in decent PR.
They don't care. That's what it comes down to. And I'd love to have a debate with one of them to say, well, show me your PR policy or talk to me about your PR strategy. Because you don't care. They could have gone, you know what, oh, booming. And this is how crazy it is. Rightmove are that hated that the Bruce Brothers' new incarnation is actually more popular.
Yeah.
But then you've got to say, fair play to Booming, they gave 10 grand to that appeal. And people say it's charity washing, it's this, it's that. But the reason why Booming are getting a loads of PR, because they seem to have a strategy for, right, we have got to change our image in people's minds. Where Rightmove have got the attitude, we're Rightmove, we don't have to do shit. Do you know what I mean? That's it. Just seems it smacks of arrogance.
And I wonder if they'll be punished in the sort of tale of property history, whether they'll be punished in the long run, or will we all still go along with it because it's a means to an end? And let's face it, the public think that house buying is pretty much synonymous with one or two different sort of brands, but only Booming and their money will be able to prove me wrong on that. And I, like I said to Chris, I think all that charity washing, as far as I'm concerned, do as much of it as you like, as long as charities at the end of the day are benefiting from it, then that's great. And I think any sort of effort to boost agents' sort of mental health, because I think we do struggle with it, and I think that it's a profession that has its darker moments. There are highs and lows. This is a massive.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Because I agree with you. I've spoken to a couple of agents.
I think it's a roller coaster ride of emotions. Being an estate agent, you've got to go out there and put yourselves into a hostile environment. So anybody you did your death knock, right? Now, and if that family would have slammed the door in your face, then that would have been the end of it, and you would have gone back to the paper and gone, sorry, boss, they don't want to talk to me. But once you step into their domain and you're in their living room, we as agents, we have to do that every day. We're going into people's houses. It's their comfort zone. It is their home territory. You are an unwanted alien to a certain extent, and you need to win their trust, and you need to also and you're doing it in one of the most hostile environments ever. So sometimes when you have a particularly contentious meeting, you might choose to do it on neutral ground. So you'll say, right, well, instead of my office or your office, let's do it at Costa. Well, there is you can't get further away from neutral ground than somebody else's living room. It's the very heart of their lives. So I think that you go through a journey as an estate agent where you sort of that part of it is you need to sort of be enthusiastic, you need to be caring, you need to sort of understand these people's story and their situation, see if you can build a connection very quickly, because you know that your competition's coming in next and they might have all sorts of so there's that. And then if you win the instruction, the journey goes up, you're even more enthusiastic and bringing this property on the market. And then very quickly, once you get into the nitty gritty of it, moving home is not great sometimes for emotions. It's a very emotional journey for most people. It is the most expensive single item they will ever buy in their life. But sometimes the process is fraught with anxieties and different pitfalls. You've got surveyors and mortgage brokers and solicitors, and it's all extremely it feels intrusive. If you go and see your mortgage broker, they'll want to know, a bank will want to know the ins and outs of a cat's arse before they lend you a penny. And the whole thing, are they going to lend it me? Are they going to lend it me? Oh, yes, we've got our mortgage offer. And some people refuse to believe that they're actually buying a house until the survey's been done and the formal offer's been issued. And now more so than ever, where you've got people on furlough and you've got uncertainty as long-term employment prospects. That roller coaster's going like this all the time. And it feeds back onto the agent the agent is listening to all of this. We're like therapists sometimes, and we're not particularly good at offloading at the end of the day. So my wife's a psychologist, and psychologists have what's known as supervision. And what that means is once a week, she'll sit down with another psychologist and say, right, this is what I've done this week, and this is how it's affected me, and you get it off your head, and you sort of, you manage to talk about it with somebody else. In the industry, we're very bad at doing that.
But isn't that why agents together, and I know we had some sort of questions about it when it started, but isn't that why I think that it could be a really brilliant idea if it's done really well, in terms of giving agents someone to do that offloading on?
I think it would be amazing. They talk about mentoring, and I think it'd be amazing if they just had, there's mentoring and there's accountability. What Stephen Brown does, and I know he gets almost sick of talking nicely about Stephen Brown because he's such a nice guy, and a lot of people have got a lot of time for him, and they say a lot of good stuff about him, but the proof is in the pudding. I will get a call from Stephen Brown every couple of weeks, whether I want one or not, whether I've paid him a penny or not. I must say, I have not given Stephen a penny in terms of buying his training or services. I've not turned up at a mastermind of his in months because we've all been doing this. But he will call me and sort of say, right, how's your week been? How's life? How are Miriam and the kids? What are you struggling with at the moment? And it's just that ability to talk to somebody else outside of your sort of box and sort of say, you know what, what we're struggling with this week is your homeschooling has created tension, for instance. I get to go to work, everybody else is locked in here. There are those sort of things. There's all that sort of stuff that I think is tremendously useful. You don't need to be a psychologist to do it. You just need to be a mate sometimes.
It's what you said there is just reminded me. Last week I said to Wendy, I'm a bit fed up with everything, and she just will tell me about it. So we've been building up since the turn of Christmas. There's a bit of lockdown, and we were very busy, and we're implementing new things here. But just purely, like just spilling the beans, not spilling the beans, but like just saying, I got this on my mind, I got that on my mind, I got blah, 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 blah. Just that action of getting it off your chest, like you described it as offloading. It's just so helpful. It was just I felt like a literal weight had been lifted off my chest. Nothing had changed apart from me sharing a problem.
So I think as much as that charity's great, and this is me talking now, two agents together, whoever, I think that's amazing. And there are people that have very acute mental health needs that are going to need to see a professional. Yeah. But actually, I think if we have a buddy system, which will cost nothing, it won't cost anybody a penny, where literally I know that my job, if you like, is, or I've accepted the challenge that I accept is to call Jerry every 2 weeks and say, hey Jerry, how's it going? Yeah. Just another agent from the other side of the country calling me just to say, hey buddy, how's it going? And for me to be able to say, yeah, I had a couple of wins. These are my wins. These are my personal, and I think just for 10 minutes, that makes a great deal of difference to somebody's mental health. And I think that's why our industry as a whole needs to talk more. And we maybe need to get better organized in doing these initiatives. And it's not just for whitewashing, PR washing, charity washing, you call it whatever you want. I think there's work to be done. Before I let you go, because I'm going to let you go, because I need to make breakfast for my wife, because that's just the kind of guy I am on a Sunday. Hey. You've given me an hour, very generously given me an hour of your time. If you could have an hour of anybody's time within the industry or without the industry, living or dead, who would you choose to spend an hour with?
No doubt, it'd be my mum and dad. They're both dead, but it would just be them.
Do you know what's so mega interesting? The last 3 people I've asked that question to have all told me effectively dead relatives. So Chris Watkins wanted to spend time with his grandfather. Christian Byfield wanted to spend time with his grandparents, and I knew you might mention your mum and dad because I know
Because
you
I'm an
do.
orphan. We started the show with saying that, didn't we? Or was
I'm an
that?
orphan. Do
I'm an
you
orphan.
know an orphan face?
It's a white old run of a twist.
I'm an orphan.
Please, son, can I have some more? Like that. Yeah. But no, it would be them.
It's beautiful. Well, I'm
or
sure.
Joe Rogan. Or Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
He spoke to so many interesting people. So it's great that you want to speak to an interesting person, but what's more interesting, in my book, is speaking to a person who spoke to loads of interesting people.
Yeah, I like Joe Rogan. I've got a lot of time for those shows. Jerry, I'm sure if the people that you want to spend an hour with could see you today, and if you believe in that sort of stuff, if they're looking down on you, they'd be extremely proud of you, son. And they would, I'm sure, be extremely proud of you and Charlotte and all of you. You're doing a tremendous job, and keep it up. What you do for our industry, in terms of, I know you get paid for doing what you do, and it's not a charity, but you do an awful lot of charity work. You've got the Karma Club, which I think is beautiful. It's giving a portion of your profits to a designated charity, and I think you've been able to support many charities over the past year, which is just absolutely superb. But on behalf of the industry, you need thanking for being a true cheerleader of our industry and sort of making us shine at our best and highlighting what we can and what we should aspire to be. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's a love heart. That's a thanks.
And let's kiss.
Jerry, go have a wonderful Sunday. Have you had breakfast yet?
No, I told you I was ill last night. So
you're giving it a pass today?
I might do. I feel a bit ropey.
Go and have a bacon sandwich because I can't have one. So you may as well have one for me.
I don't eat much meat now. I won't eat red meat ever now.
Really?
Maybe.
Hang on. Let's just get this right. You don't drink and you don't eat meat.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
I actually no, I do. I had chicken yesterday. I do eat meat.
Okay, no. Well, let's qualify it. Jerry doesn't eat any meat. It would take a vast amount of effort to kill and catch. Yeah. So chicken he can cope with. Tuna he's not having because you need to go out to sea in a boat for that. It's too much like hard work.
Cod is all right, I think. Cod.
Would a goat? I think curried goat.
I love curried goat. I love curried goat.
There you go. All right, because they're gullible. They'll come if you hold out your hand. The goat will come up and eat. Yeah. So basically, we know your type. It's opportunistic killing.
That's what it is. Going back to Harold Shipman again. We started with Harold, ending with Harold.
Well, and on that note, we're going to end. Love you, man. Thanks for taking the time to talk.
No worries. No worries.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.